talk about open heart, clear mind. Yeah, this was actually, I was going to say the original printing. The original one had pink letters, and it didn't look very good. So right away they reprinted it like this. Now it's been reprinted again with a different cover. Yeah, but the idea of this book was to be an introduction to Westerners about the basic Buddhist concepts in simple English. Yeah, plain English that people could understand. And it got written because one of the students at the polytechnics was, when I lived in Singapore, I would teach at the polytechnics. Then they said, what book can I give my mom that has, English that she can understand, not all these Sanskrit, Pali, Tibetan, Chinese words. And at that point, I really couldn't think of one. This was way back. And so he said, well, how about if you write one? So that's how the book got written. It was quite interesting because I submitted it to Wisdom Publications, and they sent it back. And they said, it needs more about science. We want an introductory book that has more about Buddhism and science. And also they wanted me to explain karma without putting it in the context of rebirth. And I said, I can't do that. Yeah. I was just as puzzled. So then I gave it to Snow Lion, and they took it, and it's been in print ever since. So this is something that, it was really meant to give people the main ideas of Buddhism, so that they have some background, because otherwise you go into a teaching, maybe they're translating Nagarjuna's Karikas, and you don't understand anything, or maybe it's a tantric empowerment and you understand less than anything. And so just to have something that gave people some background. So I thought today that I would talk about rebirth and karma. It was one of the topics in this book put in, and it ties in, rebirth and karma. Yeah, the two are explained, in close proximity. Okay, but before we do, let's take refuge and generate our motivation. Have a few minutes of silence. Do they have the, okay.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So in our ordinary view, when we look around, we see people. And there is, when each time we look at a person, it is one person with their personality that is a proscribed entity, certain habits, certain things they could do that are predictable, that there's a real person there that is either good or bad, likable or not. And so we relate, especially to people, but also to everything else, as if they had their own entity that makes them what they are. And so in this life, we like some people, we don't like other people.
And the way we conceive of them, they're just a real person with that certain personality or those certain characteristics. But in fact, they are basically a karmic bubble, something produced by causes and conditions, something with a myriad of different traits and possibilities. And they haven't always been the person that we see now. In a previous life, they could have been born in a different realm, or a different planet, or a different country. And we probably wouldn't recognize them. And the same will happen in the future. We'll all get blown by the winds of karma, take various other rebirths. We may not even know each other for eons. And even if we met again, we wouldn't recognize each other from previous lives. So when we think about this, the idea of a person, our idea of what a person is, changes. It doesn't seem like a person is such a concrete entity that is forever and ever despicable or ever and ever fantastic. So many of our opinions about other people, we think they really are what we hold them to be. But, they have many, many traits that are contradictory to the one that we're focusing on. And in previous lives, and again in future lives, they will be totally different. So seeing this, what use is it to have concrete conceptions of people? I like this person. I don't like that person. This person is so wise. That person is a jerk. Who are these people that we think we know? So when we think about this, it really challenges our preconceptions. And it can be a little bit unnerving at first, because we feel so much more secure if we can pin things down, know exactly their entity, know exactly how we feel, know exactly how we will treat them. And it's so strange that that makes us feel secure when holding that kind of view, we actually don't understand the other person at all. So as we discuss rebirth and karma today, let's do it to increase our own wisdom so that we can be of benefit to all these beings through developing the right understanding of who a person is, what a sentient being is. Okay, so bring up your compassion and let's make that bodhicitta our motivation for today. So I find reflecting like that to be quite helpful. You know, when I think I know somebody and this is who they are and this is what I can expect from them. You know, that in fact, people are not concrete entities, and similarly, I am not either, even though I'm sure that I am. Yeah? Don't you feel like you're a real person? Everybody else is a real person. And then, you know, when somebody dies, we get so confused. Wait, they were there, and I knew exactly who they were, and they were fixed and kind of permanent, even though I'm told they're impermanent. I think they're still permanent. So how could they die? You know, they can't die. I can't die. And yet, the reality is, we die. Yeah. Okay, so we see that so much of our grief, our pain when things change, is due to our mind being so fixed, you know, that not only are things permanent, but they have an entity and they can't possibly be anything else. Yeah? And then when we hear about rebirth, it just seems like, well, how is that possible? How could I have been a frog? You know, impossible. How could I have been in the God realm? Impossible, because I am me, and this is who I am, and I can never change. Okay, so this is the cause of a lot of our problems, we can see. Yeah? Okay, so what is a person? Okay, the definition, and you know Buddhists love definitions, is that which is merely designated in dependence on 4 or 5 aggregates. Okay, it's designated in dependence on the aggregates. Whenever you hear the words independence on, yeah, then the thing that is being designated and the thing that it's dependent on cannot be the same thing. Because this is designated depending on this one. If they was the same thing, then you would have to say something's designated in dependence on itself, which doesn't make any sense at all. Okay? So, yeah. So what are the 4 or 5 aggregates? Well, there's one physical one, the body, and there's 4 mental ones. Okay? So feelings, discrimination, miscellaneous factors, which is like a grab bag for everything else, and the particular sense consciousnesses. Okay? So, yeah, basically, in short, the body and the mind. So when the body and the mind come together and have a relationship, we say that there's a person there. When the body and mind separate, we say the person died. Okay? So the body and mind having a relationship, that's all that being a living person means. Yeah. Do you wake up in the morning and say, this is a body and mind that are temporarily have a relationship? No, there's me. Yeah? Now, the body and the mind are distinct phenomena, and they have very different natures. The nature of the body is material, made of atoms and molecules and all the other things in the elemental chart, as well now as microplastics and all sorts of other things, make up the body. So, there's the body, something physical. The mind is that which is clear and knowing. Clear can mean formless, it's not material. Clear can also mean that it has the ability to reflect objects. And then cognizant, the other characteristic of mind, means that it can engage with those objects. Okay, so the body and mind each have their own distinct continuum. Yeah, the body, if we take our present body and trace it back, and this is a very interesting meditation to do, how this body depends on yesterday's body, which was similar but also different because we've eaten food and we've excreted different stuff from yesterday. And then yesterday's body depends on the body of the day before. And then when you go, that depends on the body 10 years ago, you don't need to go in one step, day by day, but 10 years ago, my body today depends on the body that I was 10 years ago. Do you see more difference between your present body and the 10-year-ago body? Oh, my aching back, whatever it is. Okay. Then, trace that body back further. Go 20 years ago. Some of you are still quite young. Freshly out of the crib. But, if you think body 20 years ago, depends on the body from the year before, and then you start going back, and then you have remember when you had a teenage body, was your teenage body anything like the body you have now? Did it look the same? Did it feel the same? Your teenage body did?
30 years
So, what about your body when you were 10 years old or 5 years old? Body was different. How about the body that just came out of your mother's womb? Can you imagine that one time you came out of your mother's womb and that was the continuum of this body? How about being in your mother's womb? Really? This body? No, not this body. The continuum of this body. Went into the mother's womb. But if you took out, that fetus, And you compared it to the adult we are now. Could you match fetuses and adults? No way. Yeah. I remember my dad commented when he went with my mom to her high school anniversary, reunion, okay? And they had the pictures of all the graduating class. And he was from a different high school, so he didn't know any of those people. But he said he couldn't match the pictures on the wall of the graduating class with all these old people that he saw around him. Yeah? And yet there's a continuum there. What we did when we were younger, the body, that we had when we were younger, how we took care of it influences what our body is like now, which will influence what our body is like when we get old. We're not old now, ever. Yeah. So, there's a continuum, but it's not the same. And you can't match it. And that's just even in this lifetime. You can't recognize people that you knew before. After my mom died, my dad, looked up one of his old girlfriends. And, he was, how old was he then? He was late 80s, And she happened to be coming down to near where he lived, and she stopped by and visited, And my dad, I didn't meet her, but my dad commented to me later, she was an old lady. He was so surprised because his image was from, very young. And I think his image of himself was he was much younger than he was. Yeah. But it's interesting. Anyway, there's this continuum that's changing, That continuum in our body, is that who you are? That ever-changing mass of material stuff? Yeah. You wouldn't say that's who you are. And yet you look at a baby picture and you say, oh, there's me. But when you really check, no, that's not me. That's just something material. Yeah. And I'm more than just a body. Okay, there's consciousness. Okay, so consciousness too has a continuum. Yeah, who we are, what we think about today depends on, what we thought about yesterday and what objects we contacted yesterday. That depends on the day before and the day before. And we can trace our consciousness back, our mind back too. Yeah. Do you think the same way you did when you were 25? Oh, I'm sorry, some people aren't 25. I'm sorry, would you like a baby bottle? I don't want you to feel excluded. Goo goo gaga. Okay. Yeah. But you can trace a continuum in our consciousness. Yeah. Are you different except for him? From when you were a teenager? Actually, some of you behave like teenagers. Are you the same kind of thoughts going through your mind as when you were like 17? Yeah? What about when you were 12? What was your mind glued to when you were 12? What did you think about when you were 12? What grade was that? Seventh grade, yep. What did you think about in seventh grade? Yeah. What about third grade? Yeah, do you remember your teacher in third grade? Yeah, I had Mrs. Grohl. Miss Grohl. Fourth grade was Miss Lockwood. Anyway, are you the same person then as you were then? Yeah. Yeah. What are some of your earliest memories in this life? Yeah. Are you the same person as that baby, as that toddler, or that child? We had totally different we thought about different things. Our body of knowledge was different, our emotions were different, and yet there's a continuum, okay? So when we trace the body back, okay, we can trace the physical continuum, and it gets to the point where the sperm and the egg came together, and everything after that is just a bunch of recycled whatever we ate. Yeah, that formed this body. Yeah. Where did the material of the sperm and egg come from? Our mom and dad. Where did that come from? Yeah, well, whatever they ate and whatever genes they had. Yeah, and that's it. We can trace it back in a material way. When you go forward to in this life, as the body ages and decays, when it dies, what's going to happen to it? Yeah. Well, you think they'll preserve my body. Yes. Yeah, we human beings refuse to recognize change. And so we want to preserve the body and even create a philosophy of the same body being resurrected and coming alive again. Yeah, either in heaven or by using cryogenics. Yeah? But this body's going to come alive again. But this body is changing all the time. There's a material continuum. Even if you put it, I was going to say in a crate, but that's effectively what a coffin is. And you put the coffin in a, what do you call it? A concrete. They put it in some... a vault. Yeah, and then they bury the vault. Oh, that'll keep it nice and fresh. Yeah, no, it's still going to decay, yes, and it's going to smell. Yeah, when they buried my mom, I remember one of her friends said, "Oh, Adele, my grave's going to be right over there. We can talk to each other." I think she was joking, maybe. Okay. But when you think about it, the natural state of the body, it's going to decay. The worms are going to have lunch. Yeah. Or some wild animal is going to have dinner. Or some birds are going to peck at it. Or you drowned in the sea and some fish eat it, or it decays in the sea. Anyway, the point is, the body has a continuum of material that goes before this life, before this body. It has a continuum of material going after the death of this life. Similarly, the consciousness has a continuum in the past. We were just seeing, one day before, and then the day before that, and the day before that. You get to the time where the consciousness entered into the zygote, the unified sperm and egg. Where did that consciousness come from? what was it in the moment before it entered the zygote? Yeah. Did it come out of nowhere? Well, nothing that functions and changes came out of nowhere. It have to have a cause. Well, is it a property, an emerging property of the body? What does that mean? I don't know. Ask a scientist. This is what they say, that somehow consciousness emerged from the body. But they have very different natures. How can something material produce something that by nature is immaterial? Mm-hmm. Similarly, okay, consciousness is changing through this lifetime. When we get to the moment of death and the body and the mind separate, body has its continuum. What happens to the mind? Is there nothingness? That there's been one moment after another, after another, after another, without interruption, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, it stops. Okay? What would have made it stop? Yeah. What could make something that is clear and cognizant stop when one moment of clarity and cognizant gives rise to the next one? Okay? So we get the continuity of mind that goes beyond this life. Yeah? And depending upon what karma ripens, then we take a body, most beings, not all, take a body in the bardo, called the bardo body, and that's the in-between state. And then when the causes and conditions come together, because that consciousness has craving and it wants another body, it takes rebirth in another body. Okay? Except for some beings who have attained very high states of meditative absorption as humans, then they could be born in the formless realm, or they don't have a gross physical body like this. Okay? But the point is, that the body and mind are different natures, and they both have continuums that came before what they are today, that go on afterwards. Yeah? So if there's a continuum of consciousness, and because that consciousness has craving, and wants another life, and so often wants another body, then there's going to be rebirth in that other body. Because what could make the consciousness just cease? What could make it start? Yeah. So when we look at consciousness, it's beginningless and it's endless. Yeah. Our state of samsara, of being reborn again and again under the power of afflictions and karma, yeah, that has no beginning, but it can have an end, because the craving that perpetuates rebirth can be eliminated, and the ignorance that lies behind that craving can be eliminated. Okay? How can ignorance be eliminated? By ignorance misapprehends things. Yeah? So by developing a wisdom that can apprehend things in a correct way, yeah, then because that wisdom is correct, it can overpower and eliminate the ignorance. And so in that way, nirvana can be attained. yeah, so that our samsara doesn't have to keep going on and on and on if we develop that wisdom. Okay, you with me so far? So, I think that kind of logical argument based on cause and effect, can prove the existence of consciousness and can prove the existence of rebirth. Yeah. Then the question comes, well, what about some examples? Yeah. So, the Tibetans, as we know, have this system of recognizing the rebirths, the reincarnations of certain very great masters, people who are great masters in their previous life. So they do this by going out and looking for children who were born at approximately the time that would correspond after the death of the great master. And then they would observe the child and see what the child was interested in, what they were attracted to. They would often bring along objects that belonged to the master, and the child could identify them. Okay? So in the case of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he was born in eastern Tibet, in Amdo. And, in old Tibet, there were no hotels. So his family lived in a farmhouse. And what happened is the merchant parties would go from Tibet to China, to different places. And, when they would go one direction or another, they would stop at a farmhouse and say, can we stay there? Yeah. So the Tibetan government sent out a group of people that were camouflaged or dressed up as merchants. Yeah. They sent them into Amdo. Why? Because there had been a party before. I remember I told you recently about Lamo Latso, that famous lake where, you can they can see appearances of different objects. So some lamas had gone to that lake before, done a lot of pujas, and they had visions of, I think, the letter A, which related to Amdo, and, a certain different letters, that related to the area or the family, and different, different shapes and things, okay? So, and also on the previous Dalai Lama, his body was sitting in state, and the head turned towards the east a little bit. So the search party went into the east, and they would stop, at farmhouses, and since they were looking for the incarnation of the Dalai Lama, who would be a child at that time, and since the children were always in the kitchen, they didn't go, the living room was the prayer room, okay? So the merchants would go in the prayer room when they were hosted in a house, and the people who took care of the animals and the children would go in the kitchen, where it was nice and warm, and they would, amuse the child. Okay, so this was the search party that went and stayed at, the Dalai Lama, except he wasn't Dalai Lama then, at his family's house. And so the Lama, who was dressed up as one of the people who took care of the animals, was actually Kansa Rinpoche. He was from Sera Monastery. And so he and some of the others, monks, dressed up as, the people who took care of the animals, went in the kitchen. There was a little boy there. The little boy ran, and I think he jumped on Khyentse Rinpoche's lap, who was wearing a mala that belonged to the previous Dalai Lama. And the little boy pulled at the mala and said, "This is mine." And he identified Khyentse Rinpoche. Okay, he knew his name. And then, they showed other things that belonged to the previous Dalai Lama. And the child, would gravitate towards them. They often put out many things that are similar, and the child, if it's the proper incarnation, will pick the one that belonged to the previous master. Okay, if you watch the film, Little Buddha, was that the name of the film? What? No, that. Huh? The Little Buddha. Yeah, I think it was called Little Buddha. Yeah, there were 7 years in Tibet, and Little Buddha that came back out around the same time. The Unmistaken Child came out much, much later. Okay. Anyway, if you saw that movie, they took him back to Lhasa, and he could, I think the dentures or the glasses from his previous life he could identify. Yeah. So in this way they can find, somebody. Okay. That doesn't mean that everybody who has the name Rinpoche is somebody who can control their life. It just means that person, the title Rinpoche is used in many different ways. Yeah, okay. There's somebody did his PhD thesis interviewing a lot of different lamas who talked about their previous lives. And I read it in the early 80s, and I've been trying to find a copy of it ever since. Yeah, because it was fascinating, and His Holiness had written an introduction talking a little bit about the Tulku system and how it worked or didn't work. Okay. Okay. So then the question comes, well, what about us ordinary people? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe the lamas, maybe. Okay. But what about us? Well, also the continuity of consciousness doesn't end at death. Yeah. It's propelled by the karma, propelled by, the thoughts that we had at the time of death, and is attracted to another kind of body. Yeah. So one time, many years ago, I was in Florida, and I was asked to give a talk at a public library about rebirth. And so I did, and there were a number of senior citizens. It was an event during the day in Florida, so a number of senior citizens came. And one lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, "This is amazing. I didn't believe in rebirth before, but you just explained about the mystery of my son." And then she went on to say that her son, nobody else in the family had much musical talent or musical interest, but her son he loved classical music. And if they were going somewhere in a taxi or somewhere, and somebody was playing classical music, the child could identify, it was, Beethoven's symphony number blah blah, or Chopin's work number blah blah. And the mother said, "I had no idea what he's talking about. I don't know about music. How did this child learn this? Because he didn't learn it in our family. And, and I don't think in kindergarten he learned it either." and she said, this has convinced me that rebirth is real. It exists. And one story, what was the guy's name? One of you help me. There's a story about a family with a young child who kept saying, that he had been killed in a plane crash. And, there had been a war and he was killed. What was the name? We talked about it before. Nobody remembers his name? Okay. Anybody online heard this story at all? Doesn't look, no? Okay. So the family, didn't believe in rebirth, but the child kept talking about, some plane and a crash, and I was in a war, and the father, is very perplexed. He doesn't believe in rebirth, but he starts doing some research, following, what the child said about, like, the name of the plane, or, they were fighting the Japanese. And anyway, the father was able to find, and the child, I think his name was James or Jim, somebody. What?
James Lindbergh.
What was the second?
Leninger.
L?
Leninger.
Lendiner, James Lendiner. That was the child, huh? Okay. How did you spell that? Leninger. Okay. So if you Google that, they have online the interviews, different interviews with the parents, yeah, and it really shows, the father especially investigating this, and he was able to identify, that during World War II, at a certain point, a plane named whatever the plane was shot down in the Pacific Ocean, and the pilot's name was James, and this is what the child kept saying, my name was James, and it crashed in the ocean when it was shot down, okay? And the father was just aghast, and it's like, oh, what my child is saying is true. He was a pilot in World War II, and this was what happened to him. And the child had, there was something so disturbing to him about how he died in his past life. I mean, can you imagine? You're fighting a war, so already your mind is not in a good state, and then you're shot down and you drowned and there's no rescue in sight. Okay, so the child, was really disturbed by all of that. So they took the child out to the approximate area where that plane had crashed in the water, and they made, they put some flowers in there. They did, some kind of something that they made up. And after that, the child stopped having the nightmares because there was some closure about his previous life. Yeah? So, yeah, and His Holiness tells the story about one little Indian girl. She was 4 years old, and, it was written up in the Indian paper, and she kept saying, I want to go to my family. And, the family's saying, you are in your family. No, I want to go to my family. It lives in this and that village, and my mama is named so-and-so, my papa is named so-and-so. Anyway, they wound up taking the child to that village, and, they found the family who had that name, and I think it was their parents or some some other person in the family had died and been born, as that little girl. Yeah. So then we could say, well, how about in the West? Why don't they identify people? Well, for the same reason that rebirth doesn't even enter many people's minds, because we think that we are concrete entities. Or you have a religion that says you're reborn in heaven or hell. Yeah, so there's nothing about looking for children. You don't necessarily want to go out looking, for the reincarnation of your grandparents, because you don't really know what realm they've been born into, and chances are they aren't on this planet at all. Okay, but yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. And then in terms of your own life, yeah, have you ever wondered why you were born who you were born as? Why were you born as the child of the parents you have? Did you ever wonder that? Why was I born in the country I was born in? I used to think about that as a kid, especially because I knew that there was poverty in so many other places in the world. And I was like, why was I born here? Why wasn't I born in a place where there's poverty? It was right away. I mean, the world is not very fair to have some kids born in a middle-class family and other kids born in a really impoverished place. Why is that? Huh? And then, most of us here did not grow up in Buddhist cultures or in Buddhist families. Why were we attracted to Buddhism? Now, I'm not saying we are all reincarnations of great lamas. Forget that. Okay, calm your arrogance a little bit. Yeah. But still, why were we attracted to Buddhism, and why didn't we stay with the religion that we were born into? Yeah. Why was that? My parents were very clear with me. There is nobody in your genetic heritage that is Buddhist. Okay? Very clear. Why are you Buddhist? There is nobody in your heritage that is Buddhist. Okay? So, I've never sent my genes into 23andMe, but, I know what my brother is. I'm probably the same thing. So, okay. But, so not genetically, I'm not a Buddhist because of my genes. What about, because they always talk about nature and nurture. So nature, no, it's not in the genes. Nurture, yeah. When you grew up, were you exposed to Buddhism growing up? Yeah, a few of you were born in Buddhist cultures, but many of us, no. Yeah. Do you remember seeing pictures of Buddha, when you were little, or hearing chanting? In the community I grew up in, Yeah, you're laughing at Hermann Hesse, yes. Yes, that was our introduction to Buddhism. The novel Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Yeah. But that's kind of the only thing. Or maybe you had a world history class in junior high and you saw pictures of different countries. But it isn't like it came from our environment and what we were taught. So why? If it's not nature, it's not nurture. Yeah, the only thing you can really trace it back to is previous life, yeah, that we had some connection to Buddhism. Yeah. We may have been Buddhists, we may not have been Buddhists in a previous life. Yeah. How many people come here to the Abbey? We have field trips with high school kids coming here. That may be the only time in eons that they've seen anything Buddhist. But if they come and they're interested in it, and it plants seeds in their mind stream, okay, after 2 days they're back to being a high school student and their video games and all this kind of stuff. But there was some seed that was planted that could make them attracted to Buddhism in a future life. Yeah. And so that could have been our connection too. I've always thought I might have been a flea in Lama Zopa's Shemdop when he was meditating up in Laudo. And, knowing him, he probably did 3 hours of prayers over that flea. Because that's what he does. If there's a roadkill, he would stop in the road, no matter where they were going, stop, and he would do prayers for the roadkill. So maybe, that was how the seed got planted in my mind. I have no idea. Okay? But it's, in cultures where rebirth is accepted, they will listen to what little children say. And little kids will often talk about, oh, I remember this, I remember that, can we go here, can we go there? And in our culture, the parents just say, oh, you were dreaming. Yeah? Do you remember times when you said things to your parents? Maybe, and they said, oh, you were dreaming. Yeah? But maybe, it was a dream from, something from previous life. Yeah? Or some little kids have a lot of nightmares. Maybe previous life where they were in the hell realm. And this kind of thing is left over as a child manifesting as nightmares. So in Tibetan culture, they pay attention to this. Like I said, they don't then take the child, recognize my child, it must be, Rinpoche. No, it's, but they just accept that. One Tibetan man told me that he had a young child, and in Dharamsala one day, when somebody was doing firecrackers, and the firecrackers started going off, and the child was terrified and went and hid inside the house in a very sheltered place. And, and I don't know if the child said this or, if this was the parent's description. I can't remember because it was a while ago. But the idea was that the child thought that the firecrackers were the Chinese shooting at them when they were fleeing Tibet. Yeah, and that's why he was terrified and ran in the house and took cover. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing to be aware of. Now, the question comes, what kind of connections did we have with the people that we know now? What kind of connections did we have with them in the past? So there's one story that the lamas really like to tell that I find very interesting and very helpful, because it really shows the nature of samsara, because how we can be human in one life and reborn as a totally different being in another life and have a totally different relationship with the people in this life, in the next life. Okay, so they tell the story of two arhats who were going on Pindapat, and they, they went to one family, and they could look in the family's house, and one of them started chuckling and said, "Samsara is so strange." Okay, and the other one said, "Well, what's happened?" So he said, "Well, here's a scene. The wife, the mother, is feeding bones to the family dog, and the father is sitting there holding a baby on his lap." And then he gave other descriptions about the other people there. But then the Arhat said, "But the woman who's feeding fish bones to the dog, okay, let me think. The dog, maybe the dog was a child who had passed away. What? No, yeah, okay. The child was somebody, was actually the father who had died. No, sorry. No, he was feeding him fish, but who was the dog? No, the mother was feeding. The mother's mother, okay. So the mother is feeding fish to the dog, yeah. The dog is that woman's mother. The fish was her husband.
Her father, yeah. The dog is father, the woman's husband.
Oh, yeah. The fish was her father. Okay. So she was feeding the rebirth of the father to the rebirth of the mother, of her mother. Yeah. And her husband, who was holding and playing with the baby was the wife's lover, who had been born as their child. And so they were laughing, these arhats, how strange samsara is, because if they could see who they were just a few years ago in their previous life, they would be horrified. But the relationships that they have now, they don't see that, yeah? So they're not, the woman isn't saying, "Oh, I'm feeding my father to my mother." Yeah, and my lover is sitting on my husband's lap, being cuddled.
The husband killed the lover.
The husband killed the lover? Oh, I didn't know that.
He's holding the enemy.
Yeah. Well, he didn't need to kill him. It's just the fact of that being his wife's lover was enough for him to hate. Anyway, I don't know really. This is a story, but it proves a point, okay? Which, and so this is relating to the motivation that I led at the beginning of our talk, yeah, of kind of expanding our idea of, what is a person? And is when I form concrete ideas about who somebody is, including concrete ideas about who I am, does that have any basis in reality? Yeah, because the consciousness is changing all the time. The body's changing all the time. Mm-hmm. And when we look at people, who knows what relationship we had with them in a previous life? Yeah. They say, because we have collective karma and individual karma. So they say that when you are together with a group, if you support the purpose of that group, then you are creating karma together, and chances are, you will experience a result together. Yeah. Even within experiencing the result together as a group, yeah, everybody's still going to have individual experiences like that. Yeah. So if we're doing something virtuous together now, talking about the Dharma, so, sometime in the past, maybe we were all fleas together in Rinpoche's Shemdap, okay? And he, blessed all of us. What, you don't think you were a flea?
Yes, I was a flea.
Yes. Yeah, we're not beyond being fleas, are we? Yeah. The stink bugs that are out now, we're not beyond being a stink bug. Yeah. Or a peacock. We have mom and dad peacock are walking around the Abbey these days. Okay. We don't have any baby peacocks, though. Yeah. So, yeah, we have to ask them, when are you having a baby? Yeah. Joking. Okay, so here we are doing something virtuous together, Maybe in a previous life, we were all fleas together. We all went to some teaching together, yeah, or we all, made an offering together, or we were all in the same high school class in some different universe 50 million eons ago, and we went to a Buddhist monastery together, and that seed was planted. Maybe, we don't know, okay? But sitting here now, sharing the Dharma together, we're having different opinions. Not opinions, but different experiences, okay? Some people are falling asleep, yeah? Some people are saying, oh, they're thinking this teaching is so boring. Would you really expect me to believe that? Somebody else is thinking, I think I really am a Rinpoche. They're going to identify me, I'm sure. Yeah, you. Yeah. Yeah. Will the real Rinpoche please stand up and give a Dharma talk? All of a sudden, forget it. Oh yeah, her little dog, yes. Come on, Moonsal, come up here. Yeah, so, she brought her little dog to the teaching. Yeah, dog's getting some good imprints. Okay, so, the roles, the relationships change all the time. Personalities change. Like, we've experienced the 14th Dalai Lama. He's very humorous. He's very, he's a very warm person. Yeah, he makes people at ease. From what I've heard of the 13th Dalai Lama, he was really, much sterner is that, much more stern. I don't know what the, anyway, yeah, he was sterner, or much more stern, however you want to say it. Yeah, than the present one. So totally, very different personalities. Yeah. When I was at Kopan back in the 70s, there was one young Lama who, he was, I don't know, he was quite young. 8, 10, something like that maybe. And I know him now too as an adult. But they were saying that he used to recite texts when he was asleep. Yeah, and it wasn't text that he had memorized in this life. Yeah, but the people, Lama was, this was an incarnation of one of Lama's teachers. Yeah, and he was reciting the kind of things that he had memorized in the previous life. And then again, Geshe Zopa was also one of the students of this child's previous life. And he was, I think he was the one that was saying one time that this child, when he got older and he was studying, they were discussing some Dharma topic, and the child gave this really, not the child, he was an adult by then, gave this incredible explanation that was exactly the way their previous life had given that same teaching. Yeah, and they said that they just went, now we know he's the incarnation of, I forget what their teacher's name was. Yeah. But, people don't usually that doesn't usually happen. Yeah. But the point is that there's evidence in human experience of people being reborn. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what we're reborn as depends on what karma is ripening at the time we die. Yeah. And so, karma means action. It refers to actions of our body, speech, and mind. When we talk about actions of speech, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to be saying it. It can be typing it. It can be, any kind of communication. Yeah. So we shouldn't think, oh, I typed a nasty email, but I didn't create any karma of speech. No, it's karma of speech. Okay. So, all the different actions we do are leaving these seeds in our mind stream. And depending on various conditions, these actions are seen as virtuous or non-virtuous. So one of the dominant conditions is the motivation, why we're doing the action, which is why we emphasize at the Abbey so often during a day, stopping and renewing our motivation, generating bodhicitta. Even if we don't really feel bodhicitta deep in our heart, we're planting that seed in the mind stream again and again and again, which is quite important. And it does affect our life. Yeah. When you wake up in the morning, if you think, today I'm not going to harm anybody, I'm going to, help as much as I can, I'm going to remember bodhicitta and practice that, that influences how you do the rest of the day, even if you forget in the middle of the day and you get ticked off at somebody, okay? It's still putting that imprint in the mind. So the motivation is a major part of it, the nature of the action, how the action was done, yeah. Was it done, with a lot of planning and very elaborately, or was it done just very quickly and impulsively? So, all these different factors go into whether the action is heavy or light. Yeah, and so different karmic seeds are in the mind stream because of that. And then, so we're really, on our mind stream, it's a hodgepodge of all kinds of different karmic seeds. So just because we're human in this life doesn't, and that's a product of good, virtuous karma, doesn't mean that we can just sit back and, we'll be born human beings again in our next life. No, because if we, really look at the actions that we've done, okay, anybody here who's never killed any kind of animal or insect? Yeah, anybody here who's never snitched something, taken something that hasn't been freely given to you? Yeah, anybody who's never, ever, ever lied or exaggerated? Okay. What about saying harsh words to somebody? Somebody who's never done that? Somebody who's never talked behind other people's back? Yeah, okay. So we have lots of those seeds in the mind stream, okay? We also probably have virtuous seeds in the mind stream. Yeah, I mean, somehow, not only did we have the virtuous seeds that brought this life, you know, being born as a human being with this kind of body and mind, but we live in a country where we have enough to eat, yeah, where the people in the country are not in, you know, murdering each other right, left, and center, although the U.S. is getting closer. But, you know, it's not a civil war. Okay. So, you know, we have enough food, we have clothing, we have shelter. Yeah? We have so much, we have more than most people on the planet have. Yeah? And we still aren't satisfied with what we have. Yeah, but so, you know, our mind, there's all sorts of different karmic seeds on our mind stream. And then depending upon which ones start to ripen at the time of death, you know, let's say of this lifetime, then depending on which ones are ripening, then that will make us attracted to be born in a certain realm, yeah, in a certain kind of body within that realm, you know, whether we have food, whether we can meet the Dharma, you know, all these other things are conditioned also by our karma. So it's not just one karmic seed that ripens at the time of death. There's so many, yeah, that can ripen. Sometimes it's even more than one that ripens as just the realm we're born into. But when you start looking at all the different situations that we're in, you know, are we born in a healthy body or an unhealthy body? Yeah, are we born, you know, with a brain that works properly or a brain that doesn't? Yeah. You know, what kind of things are we interested in? So, you know, all of this stuff, it's conditioned phenomena. And so a lot of it comes from, you know, previous lives, either habitual tendencies that, you know, that we cultivated, different attitudes maybe, or different emotions that we cultivated in previous lives. And yeah, and things ripen and determine, you know, influence who we are and how we relate to the world in this life. And karma is always ripening. It's not just at the beginning of the life. It ripens and, you know, no, I mean, every day karma is ripening, and every day we're creating new actions that are leaving more karmic seeds on our mind stream. Yeah. So, you know, to just say, well, I'm a pretty good person this life. I'm sure I won't be born in the lower realms. That is really, that's foolish. Yeah, because we have all sorts of different seeds on the mind stream. And, you know, depending upon the environment when we die, different things will ripen. Yeah? And can we control our mind when we're dying? You know, thinking positive thoughts so that virtuous karmic seeds of virtuous karma will ripen. Yeah? How about when you're not dying, when you're not in pain, can you control your mind and keep it in some kind of reasonable state. You know? So if we can't do that, when we're alive and healthy in a good atmosphere, what's going to happen if you die on a battlefield? Yeah? Or you die in a car accident, wham. Or, you die of who knows what kind of disease as the body just gets old and, loses power. Yeah. So this is an important thing to think about, because otherwise we just take this life for granted. We're permanent. Yes, we're going to die sometime, but not today, and not tomorrow, and not in 10 years, and not in 20 years. Okay, maybe in 100 years I will be dead, but it doesn't really feel like that. Yeah, I'll just continue one day to the next. And we see that way of thinking is just nonsense. Yeah, total nonsense. And so realizing that, then we want to make our life meaningful, and we want to do that starting now, and to do it as much as we can. It doesn't mean that we should get anxious and tense and I've got to create virtue every single day. Oh, okay, I'm reading this Dharma book. Yes. Okay, yeah. And then, okay, I'm lifting all sentient beings out of misery when I lift up my glasses. I'm wiping when I wipe my nose. I'm wiping away all their misery. I've got to keep creating virtue. Yeah, okay. Aside from getting a very bad state of lung, you're going to drive everybody else around you nuts. as well as drive yourself nuts. So, we have our motivation, our intention. We remember it throughout the day. We try and act according to it as much as we can. We remember to dedicate the merit. Yeah, we remember to make certain aspirations, like, to be able to meet the Dharma in a future life, and not just meet it, but to have faith, to meet, really pure teachers who can guide us to awakening. Not just that, but to have a good relationship with those teachers, to have Dharma friends who encourage and support us, to really make these kinds of aspirations and dedications so that we can steer our, make that very strong in our mind so that there's some chance of that kind of thought coming in the mind when we're dying, and as a result, helping virtuous karma ripen. If you're dying in the hospital, and you're in a room with various other people, and somebody's watching a cowboy movie, and somebody watching a sci-fi movie, and all that is going in your mind when you're dying, will you be able to control your mind and make it towards something virtuous? Or is that kind of thing going on, going to make some kind of negative karma ripen? Yeah. Like you see somebody, walking by, and that reminds me of that person that I didn't like. Yeah. And you have that feeling of anger or hatred towards that person at the time you're dying. That's going to make some kind of non-virtuous karma ripen. Yeah, so, we have to be careful about this. Because how much control do we have over our mind? Okay. but we are fortunate to be human beings and to even think about this, yeah, and have some idea about it, and to hear teachings about bodhicitta and be able to practice that. Yeah, so, we're also very fortunate. So we're fortunate, but don't get complacent. We're on the edge of a cliff, but don't despair. You have to be realistic all the way around. Okay, so we have a few minutes if you want to ask questions. Oh, I should say, the reason that whole talk about rebirth, because rebirth is one chapter in this book. Okay. Yeah, it's in part 3, chapter 1, and the one of karma is also part 3, chapter 2, and about cyclic existence, chapter 3, part 3, section, chapter 3. So they're all together here. Okay. Questions, comments? Yeah?
I don't know if I wrote down when you said the mind is clear and knowing, clear being formless and reflective, and knowing can discriminate? Is that, what was the second one?
Knowing or cognizant means it can engage with objects.
Oh, okay.
So the clear is it can reflect the object, the cognizant it can engage with the object.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else in Oz? Or wherever you are listening, any questions, comments? Anybody more here? Yeah, Tracy?
Oh, just that there's another movie, Kundun, which is about His Holiness's
That's right.
discovery.
The movie is Kundun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
I do want to say that my love of animals and my love of the forest and nature has been with me since I was a very, very small child. And also to even being raised in a Catholic family, and even bringing it into the Dharma, is that this very strong love of images, that they really are, they were a deep source, like not having a great family life, but statues always gave me some sort of solace, some sort of peace, some sort of sense that there was somebody who was keeping an eye on me. And it really has transferred into the Dharma, in that all of our beautiful statues and tankas, I feel safe. I go into the meditation hall at night sometimes by myself to do my practice, and just the lights on the Buddha are on, and I feel that I'm in his company. And it's been, I've been tracking this since I was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, this kind of more devotional kind of feeling. So those are the kind of things that also help, besides the fact that I'm a Buddhist nun, who knows where that came from. But to see things that tend to run fairly long trajectories over the course of life, and how strong that must have been for me to bring that in, and then for it to sustain that kind of love and interest over 50, 60 years. You know?
And how important it is, too, if there's certain habits that we have, or thoughts, or, that are non-virtuous, that we're very familiar with, to really make an effort in this life to counteract them.